The fun value was great in Federation Force. Metroid Other M. Super Metroid. Forget bad game, it doesn't even exist. Let's begin. Metroid 1 for the NES. I think it's pretty fun. The story is, you know, you pretty much have to read the manual for it, but that was typical of the games at the time. The replay value is alright. The music is obviously very classic. It's not great, but it started things, you know. It's enjoyable in itself. That's the other thing too, is I'm looking at each game within itself, not relative to other games. I'm trying to like tunnel vision each game. And the general feels alright. It's not too clunky, it's not super smooth, but Metroid 1 is below average. I think if I had played Metroid 1 for the first time when it came out, I would have liked it. And, you know, maybe relative to other games at the time, like just other NES games or whatever, it would be really good, but I think it's just a little not as much. The next one is Metroid Zero Mission. Now with Zero Mission, they improved a lot relative to the original. And when we look at the fun variable, to me, it's extremely fun game. We look at the story, it's an excellent game. They've added a lot more to it. There's quite a bit of story in there without shoving it down your throat. The replay value is also excellent. The music is fucking excellent. And the feel is one of the best, like, pick up and play right away feels. So that's right in the hot, juicy zone of the next best games. Now, pretty much for literally the same reasons, OG Metroid 2 goes here. Some people say this game sucks. I loved it. It could be because I approached it as like, oh, cute, it's a game for Game Boy, and I haven't played this. You know, I had fun with it. The music is not great in Metroid 2. Like, it's not bad, but I think there's like 2 or 3 tracks for the whole game or something. The feel is about as okay as Metroid 1. The story is a bit lacking, but it's kind of one of those things where it's like, it's not just telling you exactly what's happening. You get to use your imagination a bit, which is what a lot of old games did, partially because they had to, but that was part of the magic of old games. You had to be an imaginative person, which is why for a long time video games were considered so nerdy, because you had to sit there and like think of stuff. It's like, oh, I think this is why Samus did this. And it's like, you're a fucking loser, you're a fucking virgin. Meanwhile, here we are, however many years later, more money, more bitches, drugs, sex, alcohol, we got it all. Now, Samus Returns. I think when we look at the fun variable, again, the 5 variables are important. Look at the fun, the story, the replay value, the music, and the feel. So let's work backwards with this one. The feel in Samus Returns, I think, is mid. You have a lot of options, but they just, I think because it's on 3DS in part, it's just feels slightly clunky. It's not bad. It's not bad. Man, I knew that was coming. It's not bad.
Die.
The music is a solid, maybe a little above average. It's not great though. It's just like, it does the job. The replay value to me is not very high. If I haven't played a Metroid game in a few months or something, and I'm like, what do I want to play? I do not think of Samus Returns. I'm glad I played it. I'm glad I have it. I'm glad I can play it whenever I want, but it's not what comes to mind when I think of games I want to play again. The story is excellent because it adds a lot to the story, right? It's a new content essentially. And I mean, the story in a nutshell is not that exciting in a sense. It's like, okay, Samus goes and kills a bunch of Metroids. It adds a lot, but I feel like it's like storytelling around the game. It's not part of the game. The fun, yeah, that kind of ties into the feel of it overall. Like, it's enjoyable. For right now, I'm probably gonna do another pass through, but I think Samus Returns going below average. Like, all these games are like, yeah, I'd fuck around with that. Yeah, like it's like a fuck around versus like, oh yeah, I'm not like Zero Mission. I'd be like, yo, Zero Mission though. And then these games like, yeah, Metroid 1, this is not a bad time. Super Metroid. Doesn't exist. Forget bad game, it doesn't even exist. I would say When I first played it, you know, more towards the end, it wasn't as bad, but it did still feel a little bit of the like OG Metroid clunkiness. It reminds me very much of Melee, where when you first start playing Melee, it's like it feels a little hard to move, you feel a little slow. So when you first play it, it feels a little bit clunky. But what you don't necessarily know when you start playing Super Metroid is that it has probably the highest skill ceiling for, I think, any Metroid game, especially when you start to speedrun it. You're like, wait, someone can do that thing that just happened and they do that consistently? Like, what the? So the skill ceiling is very high. And when you increase in your skill and you start to be able to execute that movement, the fun increases too. You actually like feel awesome doing it. So kind of mixing those, like the fun value is like an 8. The story is great. However, it's a lot of rehash of Metroid 1, which is sort of the point. But I'm just saying it's almost copy and paste, and then they like changed a few things. And I'm not even disagreeing with it. It makes sense for the most part. The ending of Super Metroid is extremely classic. And so, you know, it has its own oomph to it for sure. Fantoon, all you Crocmeyer weirdos can have your little Crocmeyer fan club. That's fine. Crocmeyer's a fucking bitch. Just to put that out there. Everyone's so pro Crocmeyer these days. I'm not just gonna ride that wave. But Kraid's really cool in it. Ridley's cool. Mother Brain Fight's cool. The music in Super Metroid is just, especially for the time, everything, it's like perfect. And the overall feel of playing, again, it's like slightly, it's got a little bit of that clunk. It's not as clean as Zero Mission when you first pick it up, but in the long term, that more than makes up for it. Super Metroid, going here. I will miss this. This would be the best thing they could add to Metroid Dread. Just this. I don't even need the whole D-pad. I just want a down button. Metroid Fusion. Metroid Fusion fun. S. No questions asked. The story is the best Metroid story in my opinion. Lots of twists and turns, introduction of new things, reintroduction of old things, and it is really intense, especially the more you think about it. It's like, wait, Samus's like body was like fucking ravaged and her suit like fused to her skin. They had to surgically remove it. She even says in the game that her fucking body doesn't even look the same anymore. She was reborn. And then she's fighting like demons made out of her own flesh. It's fucking insane. The replay value is extremely high to me. The music is very good, but definitely not the strongest in Fusion. There's some bangers. To me, it's all like very classic, but it's not necessarily something I would sit and listen to by itself, but it's still good. It does the job. At least, and the feel is excellent too. You kind of are often left wishing you could do wall jumps like you could in Super Metroid. That's not great, but usually you're not like pissed about a mechanic. You're like, man, I wish this was a little cooler, but it's not annoying.
Favorite Metroid soundtrack?
Dragon News, I'm not sure. We'll get to that though. My favorite sound, I guess really quickly, it would potentially be either Prime or Fusion or Super. Yeah, so my first game was also Fusion, so I understand why, you know, a lot of what I came to love about Metroid is from Fusion. My first two were Fusion and Prime. I didn't have an NES. I was like around in the SNES era, but my parents wouldn't get it for us. But we had Game Boys, and so I had no access to Super Metroid. So the next fucking thing after that was Fusion and Prime. So that's where I started. I might even rename these. I want to play a lot. I want to play often. Probably won't. So next one is Prime. The fun value in Prime to me is not as high as some of the 2D games, but because it's a longer duration, it like holds up that whole time, and it has little ups and downs. So I think the fun value is very, very high still, but maybe not as much as like Zero Mission. It's like Zero Mission, like some of the 2D ones are just so much more fast paced. And I think that's what Prime is lacking, is the fast pace, but it's still very fun. The story in Prime is absolutely excellent. Story in Prime gets a 10. There's so much story that you can choose to interact with if you want. You can scan 8 million things, or you can skip through all of it. And the more that you choose to interact with it, the more you can engage with it and understand why it's such a good story. The big picture of Prime's story is not that incredible, but it's cool that it ties into the Metroid series as a whole, which a lot of people weren't sure about for a little while, but we're pretty confident now. Replay for Prime, I think, is maybe one of the highest. Prime is a game that I truly like to play at least like once a year, like since I've had it. The music is excellent. It's the first time there was a 3D game, and so you almost get that sense in Prime that like not only is the world 3D now, but it's almost like the music becomes 3D. It's like there's a different dimension in the music. It's not, I mean, part of that is just the fact that it's not like 8-bit music anymore. It's so atmospheric, and you feel like you're in a 3D space. And the feel is a little clunky. It's not terrible. It's not terrible. It's not like bad clunky, but it's not smooth all the time. Sometimes the double jumping's a little weird. You miss a ledge, you fall in the water, you're like, oh, and you have to friggin' like it's just a little slower. Add all that up. That is I want to play a lot. Very good. Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. I am going to compare Prime 1, 2, and 3. I said I wanted to look at each in a nutshell, but I think Prime 1, 2, and 3 I'm going to compare to each other. Let's go backwards here. The feel is generally better. Small little bits of just kind of quality of life from Metroid Prime 1. The music is roughly equal to Prime 1. The story is probably better. But then we look at the fun and the replay here. I think Metroid Prime 2 has better peaks than Prime 1. There are moments in Prime 2 that are like so fucking hype. It's like you're amped about something. But the overall average is a little worse. It doesn't keep you along for the ride quite as much. And that slight reduction in fun is also essentially a reduction in the replay value. If you have less fun with it, you're not that amped to play it. There's certain moments that you want to have again, but it's like, do you want to play through this giant ass game, or do you want to just watch the video on YouTube and relive that spot? Not that that was always a thing, but consider all that. And I'm going to be honest, it goes right here. It goes right there. I'll play sometimes. Like I said, none of these games are bad. Okay, I'm going to even go ahead and do this. Not bad. If someone asks me, what do I want to play more, Prime 1 or Prime 2? I'm going to say Prime 1 every time. If I could extract some of the moments from Prime 2 and squeeze that into like an hour, that would be such a good game. But ultimately, I'd rather just play Prime 1. Metroid Prime 3. I do feel like I need to replay it to get a better gauge, because I started to replay it and it was way better. A lot of the reason being was I was on Prime Hack. The fact that I don't have to hold my arm out for fucking 6 hours. If I want to play for 6 hours, my arm's out for 6 hours. You know, you have little moments where you can put your arm down, but what they don't tell you in Metroid Prime 3 is that your shoulders end up as big as Samus's fucking Varia suit, because you have to hold your arm up the whole time. I wasn't as interested in that. So let's break it down here. The fun variable. This makes it a lot less fun. That was cool 2 to 3 times, and then it was less fun. Like, there's exceptions, but generally speaking, motion control is like fucking cool for like the first hour, and then it's like, okay, I just want to play now. I actually loved Skyward Sword at the time. I don't know why I liked doing this so much, but I loved it. I didn't necessarily love explicitly this, but I loved the game as a whole. Or I guess with Skyward Sword, you don't have to hold the thing the whole time. You can have your hand down and you just move your wrist a little bit. With Prime 3, in order to look forward, you had to aim forward. You couldn't just have it down and then like move it when you needed to. It was the entire time you have to have your arm out. So I have to judge it on that and not judge it on the Prime Hack replay that I had. Okay, so the fun was not that great because of that. The story's cool. It's like kind of mid. I think the introduction of the other hunters was cool, but personally they were not that cool to me. Okay, Rundus Schmundus, he's a cool guy. I moved on pretty quick. Replay value of Prime 3, again, frankly, is attached to the motion control element. The music, it's fine. It got too big for itself. I feel like the music in Prime 3 was everything was just like, oh, ooh. So it's like, guys, this is a fucking Metroid game. Can we not have the entire choir here for once? Let's take a breather. Some of that's fine, but when the whole fucking soundtrack it feels like that, it's like if it can't. The whole thing can't be this. And then the feel in terms of the general movement of Prime 3, I think it is the cleanest of the Prime games. But you factor in all the other stuff, and it kind of weighs on that. I'm gonna rename these tiers for a second. This is gonna be I want to play sometimes, mess around occasionally. So I'm doing my first adjustment here. Prime 2 goes up. Prime 3 goes here. Metroid Prime Hunters. This one's tricky because there's a whole other variable here that you have to consider. But let's just go with the single player for now, just like everything else. The fun value of Hunters was pretty good. Like overall, you have fun playing it. I feel like, I don't even know how to say, like, it feels good to shoot stuff in the head with different beams and kind of engage with different environments in a 3D space that doesn't just feel like Prime. So I'd say pretty good. The story sucks. The story kind of blows ass. There's elements of the story that are really cool. All the other Hunters I fucking love. It almost feels non-canon, where it's like, okay, there's this weird big alien and it like sent out a signal to check out the ultimate power or whatever. Like, it's just so like, what the fuck? The Hunters are cool. Everything else is stupid. Probably my least favorite story in all Metroid games. The replay value, we'll revisit that last. The music is bland. It has some memorable stuff, and it has a distinct tone. Like, you know when Hunter's music is on, and it has its own little niche it's carved out. But it's not bad. Again, it's not bad. It's just, it's fine. The feel, however, is one of the best video game feels I have ever had in my entire life. All of the other shit that Hunters sucked at is completely made up for by the PvP / how good that game feels to move around in. It is one of the best PvP games of all time. Dead serious. Mean that with every fiber of my being. It is one of the best PvP games ever made. And you wouldn't think it because it's Metroid Prime Hunters on the Nintendo DS. And so the story sucks. The music's bland. Whatever. It's one of the best. And so it has to go here. It would be a farce to how good the PvP is to put it anywhere else. And if you guys haven't seen it, okay, we got some new turkeys here. For whatever reason, the top of the leaderboards, which by the way, it's extremely cool that there were actual leaderboards in Hunters. I don't know how Nintendo knew to do one thing right, but they did. The top 1,000 were filled with just hacked values. It was 99999999999 for everything. So you knew they hacked. They literally just hacked the leaderboard. I don't even know if they played the game. But I was top 20 in the world at Hunters. I fucked in that game. My win ratio is 91%, and a lot of those games were with people who were also other best people in the world. Legendary Hunter hit the 5-star thing. It's kind of like Elite Smash plus. 5 stars was actually kind of hard to hit. But I was a Trace main, and I got headshots like you guys wouldn't believe. I wish there was some footage or something. You guys would shit your pants. And if esports were a thing a little bit more, obviously I don't think that would really apply for a DS game even now, but like if that was a thing, I'm telling you, I would have been like filling the arena with fans, okay? That would have been me. But this was a different time, and I only get to talk about it now. And I'm an old cranky man about it, and I wish that things were different, but here we are. Moving on. Metroid Prime Federation Force. The story is below good and below average. It's really not even much of a story, but it's neat. I will say it's neat, and I will fight you on that if you don't think it's a neat story. You have the perspective of a Galactic Federation Marine. I think that's neat. I remember when Halo ODST came out, I was like, I hope they do that for Metroid. That would be cool. So they did. The music, I literally can't remember anything from the music. I don't know if it was bad. I don't know if it was good, but clearly it wasn't that good, or I would have remembered it. The feel for the game, it did have a little bit of that Hunters-ish vibe. It wasn't crazy impressive or anything, but it wasn't bad. I don't think it was bad. I don't remember recalling any issues playing Federation Force, wishing the controls were different. Now, the fun value. Okay, you got this is where you Metroid normies aren't going to be able to keep up with me. The fun value was great in Federation Force. I will say, I did not have a chance to do any multiplayer co-op missions or any blast ball. And so my experience is limited here. So I did the missions Lone Wolf, and I loved having the little, I don't remember what they're called now, but like you got to pick like the 3 perks. And one of them was Lone Wolf, where I think it was like 15% more damage or something like that. Or like you only took 85% damage instead of... There's some little like adjustments. Like you can only use this if you're playing by yourself. And so you had to have that. Right, yeah, single player buff. And then you had to start to mix and match, especially as the levels got harder and more intricate. You had to strategize before the level and go, okay, which other things do I want? Some of them were just generally good, but some of them are more specific. And you wouldn't necessarily know that you needed something until you did that level and you're like, okay, I need more of this type of damage or something. The levels being a bit shorter generally in duration, where you have a start and a stop. Well, that was the first time it's ever happened in Metroid, and I don't think they should literally just always do that, but I actually really loved that. I loved going into levels in and out, like a Halo game, in a sense, where there's a start and an end to a level, which you can't exactly do in Metroid because you can't just like fight a boss over and over. You'd have to restart the whole save file, like, or you'd pick back up. Like it's not the same thing. And that was really cool. I think they executed that perfectly. And the fact that there was the ranking, depending on how well you did, and it would tell you what you needed to get 3 stars. It was 1, 2, or 3 stars. And some of them were hard, man. Some of them were brutal. But I loved doing it. It was so much fun. It was a challenge, but it was like a perfect challenge. It was like great game design. And inherently, that also adds a lot to the replay value. I did replay it a bunch. I replayed the certain levels a bunch. Some of the levels were like a little weirder, a lot less memorable, but more towards filler, I guess. But they were still fun. Guys, sum all that up. I said it. Federation Force is more fun and a better game than Samus Returns. I had more fun playing Federation Force than I had playing Metroid 1, Metroid 2, Metroid Samus Returns, or Prime 3. The issue with Federation Force, okay? There's nothing on here that ranks the way that Nintendo fucked up with Federation Force. The game prior to Federation Force was Metroid Other M. It had been 6 years since there was anything, even Metroid news related at all. At the Nintendo World Championship, they showed something called Blast Ball. It wasn't called Metroid. It was something called Blast Ball. And I remember watching it with Marcin. I was watching the stream. I was like, why does this look like Hunter? And then they're like, hey, by the way, guys, remember that Blast Ball thing? It's a Metroid game. And everyone's a chibi and there's no Samus. Huh? They fucked it up. They fucked it up. The surface level of Federation Force is fucking asshole. If you can get around it and you buy it and you play it, it is excellent. I want you to picture this jacked fucking Marine on the front. Like him and the boys getting ready to fuck up some space pirates. Okay? Not this weird chibi thing. Metroid Prime Pinball. I remember when I got this game. My aunt got it for me for Christmas. She got it from GameStop, used. I never told her, but I was not happy about that. And for some fucking reason, you know, like the little cover in the case you can technically slide out. For some reason, that wasn't even there. So I didn't even know what it was until I opened it. I need to see that. If you're gonna get like it, just I don't know. So I open it. I see this little Metroid Prime Pinball. I was like, oh, cool. I'll play this on the way home. Thanks, Auntie. And so I opened the game, and I didn't care at all. it very quickly kind of threw you into the game. And you're like, what is even going on? I was so confused at best. I played through the first level and I was like, what the hell am I playing? And I continued to play, but I don't even remember like anything. It was just dumb. I'm sorry to disappoint you. It was dumb. Goodbye. Our next game is Metroid Other M. I can already hear the the people in the back of the chat going, I don't like Other M. I'm really special because I don't like it. Okay, well, I'm sorry for hurting your feelings, but it's not literally just trash, and you probably didn't play it and you don't even know that. So we're gonna review things here, okay? I want to walk into a room of Metroid fans and say Other M. And then go, I'll give you $20 not to speak for the next 5 minutes. And I just keep saying Other M, Other M, Other M. I don't think anyone would make money. The fun value of Other M. It was fine. Some of the 2D movement was fun. When you go into the 3D sections, it was a little exciting at first and then like a little disappointing because you're like trying to figure out where like a patch of grass is or something and you can't find it. And it's just like, what the fuck? So I mean, it was a 4 or 5 out of 10 maybe. But it had great moments as well. The story of Other M at a high level is perfectly fine. Samus is on a mission. She sees some of the old crew. There's this, this weird science program going on. And there's this weird mother brain clone thing. Samus thinks about her past. You see some of that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Also, the fan tune thing at the end is fucking cool. Extremely cool to me. In itself, that almost makes Super Metroid better too. And the Nightmare fight was a little weird, but it was cool to see Nightmare, like the first iteration kind of Nightmare. It was only when you dive deeper and unfortunately actually play the game, the REM starts to suffer. Most people will agree with me. Some people won't. There have been people who have not only argued with me, but I believe was a contributing point to them unfollowing me from everything that I have. It's a real story. I think Other M does a poor job at painting Samus. I am very into the idea of Samus not just being this like super badass hero, but having a lot of psychological issues. I like the idea of a PTSD, traumatized, just kind of in pain person. At the same time, knowing her value to literally the galaxy. And so she kind of has to just get through it. And is always pushing herself, and I like the idea that there's a game where we see more of that. I like the idea where it's not just hero go shoot, hero go pew pew, right? That really paints a bigger picture to the character, and I think it shouldn't be every single game does that. But I love the idea that there is something to add that depth to the character. I think that's one of the most important things that could probably happen to the longevity of a story. The reason why I think it didn't deliver on that is because it just didn't seem like it lined up with everything else that we did know about Samus, which wasn't an incredible amount. When you read the Zero Mission manga, for example, she is in a lot of pain, and you do see that, but it's a little bit more like rage pain versus like super sad baby pain. And we're seeing a younger Samus when in all those flashbacks and stuff, so we're getting a bit of that, but it just doesn't add up when you think about like, okay, so she was raised by the Chozo, and so she's gonna be a little socially awkward probably, but like, why was she so like angsty as much? Like the angst didn't really make sense. She had such a bigger life already at like 14, 15 years old, whatever it was, than most people like ever would have, and so she's in my head canon, already really wise, probably still going through a lot of pain, but a very wise person at that stage of her life. So for her to act the way that she did in all of those situations, as particularly in the flashbacks, not exclusively, but particularly, it was bizarre. I do believe in the idea that there are things that we maybe just don't know that Sakamoto has in mind. Maybe there's a game, it's hard to imagine, but maybe there's a game that's going to come at some point that explains Other M better. And then we all go, oh, no, I get it. Probably not. Maybe there's a hint of that somewhere along the line in the future. I don't want to call it full-on character assassination. It felt like you didn't know the person in the game anymore. Suddenly now there's a twist in the direction. Rather than just adding depth, it's like a whole pivot. And that was the issue. Again, however, I know that there's people who viewed it as like it's so great that they're adding this depth and we're seeing this more emotional side of Samus. Like I said, I'm almost desperate to see a more emotional side of Samus. And we'll get into it. I think we saw a little bit of that in Dread, which was great. But like I'm happy to see sad Samus, but I think it needs to be different. And again, it's like, well, you can't say that. Why do you get to define what someone is like? I don't. But I can say that the story of the character is not as high value to me personally because it's just a lot less connectable. The dots don't feel as connected. My connection to the character doesn't feel as high. So I won't beat that up too much longer here. It was just bizarre. I think it's not as bad as most people say it is, but it's generally deserves the critique that it gets. The replay value, I think, is not that great. There's a lot of sitting through the cutscenes and stuff, which, you know, for a reason I talked about, just feels a little weird. But when you're actually playing the game, it feels cool to move around. But again, there's a certain element of clunk. The feel is what I just described, and that lumps back into the overall replay. The music, I literally don't remember. Like, if I heard it, I recognize it, but that would be it. So the music's not that particularly great. The feel's not that particularly great. The story was an attempt at something amazing, but not that great. There's not a lot of great words in the English language to describe what the Other M story did. Like just some weird German word or something. I know this is probably not a shocker to most of you. I'm not creating its own separate tier because it is not that bad, but it does go here. The last game in here is Metroid Dread. Fun. The fun value. Do I want to replay Metroid Dread? Vanilla, not speedrun, but vanilla? Absolutely. The areas of Dread are not as memorable to me as prior games. I'm less connected to the environments as I have been in like Super or Fusion or Zero Mission, but the environments are nice. The music is decent. I wish we had a bit more that was catchy to it. When you look at Metroid Dread, the best music are remakes, in my opinion. There's stuff that's memorable, but it's not as like I feel like it's only memorable because I was like in an E3 trailer. It's not memorable to me because it's just simply good. The feel of the game is excellent. It is excellent. I would say it is almost as good as the feel of Zero Mission, which I think is the highest feel game, in my opinion. It might even be tied with Zero Mission in terms of that, which is really impressive. The story is the best Metroid story, period. Done. And you do have to play through the whole game to know that, but it does leave a lot of room for questions. It does make you think, but that's kind of a good thing, because you're like, what the fuck just happened? It kind of makes you want to have a Dread 2, like post Ravenbeak, what the hell just happened? Can we dive into this a little bit more? In a way, Dread was Fusion 2, not just because of X-Parasites, but like revisiting their existence in general. But I was never as blown away by any Metroid game's story like I was with Dread. I think a lot of that has to do with the cutscenes being this, you know, the 3D, much more immersive thing. And I think they learned from Other M in the way that Samus should be acting in certain instances. And we do see her like kind of quietly contemplating things, looking at different Chozo hieroglyphics or what have you. It just phenomenally ties in literally everything here. I guess minus Prime 4, but technically will also be Prime 4. It ties everything in such a great way. And so you sum all that together and like Dread delivers on making that into one cohesive story. It's hard to do. And also not just rehashing a previous story like Super Metroid essentially rehashes Metroid 1. It makes sense in a story way, but that is what happens in the game in a nutshell. Dread is very, very, very unique. And so that was pretty cool to have. So, put all that together. Metroid Dread goes here too. And now we are prompted with the final question. There can only be one best game. One of these will be the best game, and I don't even know what it is yet. So let's just do some math here. Metroid Zero Mission. The fun value, 8.5 out of 10. The story, 8.5 out of 10. That puts us at a 17. The replay is a 9 out of 10. The music, 8. So that puts us at 34. And the feel is a 10. I think the feel is a 10, guys. Super Metroid. The feel, ultimately, it's tough because there's a whole different dimension to this. Are you casual or are you not? If you're casual, I think the feel is a 7. But if you're even a little more competitive, a little more hardcore, the feel is the best. And I guess that inherently has to push Zero Mission down a peg in terms of feel. The music is excellent. I would say above Zero Mission still. The replay is also above it because of the amount of sequence breaking and different ways you can play it. The story is slightly worse, probably, but Super Metroid is still better. We're gonna keep this moving here too. Actually, I kind of want to do in reverse order now I'm thinking about it. I'm not gonna explain all these as heavily. Other M's better than Pinball. I'd rather play Other M than Pinball. I'm sorry. On this list, this is where it's tough to compare a 3D game to a 2D game as well. But I do think Fusion is above Zero Mission. And I think that's because I like the story more. Despite how fun Zero Mission is to replay. So it's tough because I want to not weigh in my nostalgia. But Zero Mission was my, also a game that I've played a lot of and I played when it came out. The feel of Zero Mission overall is better than Fusion. But I think the story is less of something you can connect to. It does a great job of creating a story. But in terms of the actual immersion of that story, I think Fusion does a better job. And I think part of that is what makes Fusion more replayable. This is really hard to do. Like most of this up until right now has been like pretty linear. These tiers are ranked. Like I'm done with this list. And now this is brutal. The best feel are Super Metroid Zero Mission and Dread. The best music is Super Metroid Fusion and Prime. The best replay is Super Metroid. It's all of them. The best story is Fusion, Prime, and Dread. The most general fun are all 4 of the 2D games. This feels crazy. This feels fucking wild, but I just defined variables and criteria to align that. This has 4 out of 5 things that are near perfect. This is 3 out of 5 things. This is 3 out of 5 things. This is 3 out of 5 things that are near perfect. This only has 2 out of 5 things that are near perfect. Now add up the differences. There's going to be more, but like this isn't done yet either. And I think when you compare Zero Mission to Dread with some of the other more deeper categories here, like speed running, like sequence breaking, I think Dread beats Zero Mission, not by a ton. All these are very tight. All these are like decimal place differences. I wish some of these could be a tie. I want to make Zero Mission and Prime a tie. I don't think Prime is worse than Zero Mission. And so I'll leave them as is. Me making this list 10 years ago would have been so freaking different. But that's the list. I've grown a lot as a gamer, and I see dimensions to things that I didn't always see. Metroid Fusion, I think I enjoy more than Super Metroid, but that does not mean that it is a better game. And all this is my opinion, and I know that, and I can move anything around that I want to. This is my list. In my heart, I still have to admit that I think Super is a better game than Fusion. It's the next best one. And Dread is almost a tie with Fusion. I want to have Fusion and Dread be a tie, and I want to have Zero Mission and Prime be a tie. I'm going to even do this. It's hard to... I mean, I've never sat and thought this long about exclusively about what I think are the best games here. I think that's what it boils down to. Do you think we'll hear about Prime 4 in 2022? Yes. 100% that we will. If we don't hear about Prime 4 in 2022, I will shit in my pants on stream. Deal. I'm gonna be at the ready with a diaper on. So that's the list, fellas. And I'm gonna take a screenshot of it.